Hey, my name is Leah. Welcome. I'm a plant mom on the West Coast. I wanted to do a little plant crash course video for all those people who are just getting into plants, or maybe saw one plant and then got obsessed and then bought a bunch and you're like, oh no, what did I do? I'm not quite ready for this yet. I basically wanted to make a video about things I wish that I knew when I first started collecting plants. I didn't go from 0 plants to like 70 plants overnight, but it was definitely, I bought a couple and then I couldn't help myself. I'd go to the store and buy like 10 at a time. It can be really exciting and also a little anxiety inducing when you've bought a bunch and you're like, oh no, I don't exactly know how to take care of all of them. Here are my tips. The number one thing that you need to do, and something that I wish I listened to my mother when she told me this, is you need to check your plants for pests before you bring them home. So before you start going out and buying a bunch more plants, if you don't know what pests look like, please do a little bit of research. Look up spider mites, look up thrips, I think they're called. It's just so you know what they look like, so you know what to look for when you're gonna go buy some plants. I had a pretty devastating scenario where me and my 3 friends went plant shopping, bought a bunch of plants together, and we all bought one of the same plant. It's sort of like, oh, we all have the same plant. So we all bought Croton mammies. They've got like really spirally leaves. They all had spider mites, which ended up giving all of us spider mite infestations. This is something that happened a 1.5 years ago and I'm still kind of dealing with it. So just doing a little bit of your research and checking your plant before you bring it home is really gonna save you a lot of stress in the future. So you want to just look on top of the leaves. You want to look underside of the leaves. I think certain pests have eggs that go in the soil. Oh yeah, fungus gnats too. Fungus gnats look like little tiny fruit flies. Those ones live in the soil. So if you see a bunch of like little flies or whatever in your plant when you're at the plant store, don't get that one. But yeah, just look under the leaves and everything. That being said, when you do bring your plant home, quarantine it if you do have other plants. This way, if you end up missing some pests, then you can still prevent it from spreading to your other ones. What I usually do when I take a plant home is I'll bring it to the bathtub right away. I'll close the shower curtain and I'll spray the plants down with my insecticide. I'll wash all the leaves and just let it sit there overnight. I'll still quarantine them after that for a couple weeks, just in case that somehow misses something. The insecticide that I use is the concentrated version of Safer's End All. So when you're using that, definitely keep the windows open, or do it and then leave your home for a while because it's pretty potent. It can give you headaches. I'm pretty sure it's really not that good for you either. One thing that I really want to talk about is these things. I hate these things. They, yes, I guess, have like a general rule of like, this plant can live in this situation, but do not listen to these. These are awful. I'm not too sure if you can see it, but it just says tropical plant. It says place in a bright environment, avoid direct sunlight, between 16 degrees Celsius and 27 degrees Celsius. Water moderate, do not let stand in excess water. Do not allow it to dry out completely. Fertilize regularly. Super vague. Incorrect for most plants that you're gonna bring home. So even ones that say like the family of plant, I wouldn't listen to that, because you can have one type of philodendron have different needs than another type of philodendron, or one type of calathea need different things than another type of calathea. So to be able to check out what type of plant that you actually have, I use an app called Picture This. It lets you take a picture of the plant, and it's pretty good at recognizing what type of plant it is, if not exactly which kind, roughly in the same family. And so that way you'll get actual instructions on how to take care of it. And then with that information, then you can just do your Googling and in your own research and look it up on YouTube and stuff. And there's a lot of videos out there. Okay, and on to lighting. So after you've done your research, you can kind of figure out where in your apartment is going to be best for it. Now, southern facing and west facing windows are always the best as they get the most light. If those are the kind of windows that you have and it needs indirect sunlight, definitely don't have it right up in the window. Have it a little bit back. If right up in the window is the only place that you can have it, there are diffusers that you can get for your curtain rod. It's basically just mesh, so it'll diffuse the light so your plant doesn't get burned. Now, there's a rule of thumb with how far away from a window you need to be for the plant to get a certain amount of light. So with a north-facing window, you pretty much need all of your plants right up against it, because north-facing windows and east-facing windows get the least amount of light. So to have a plant up in a north-facing window right up against it is going to be roughly about the same as a southern-facing window 5 or 10 feet back. Don't quote me on those numbers. I haven't looked at an actual chart in a very long time. I just sort of know my apartment really well. That being said, if you don't have a lot of light in your apartment, or let's say that you live in a basement, there are a lot of really good plant lights out there these days. There are ones that are a little bit warmer, there are ones that are a little bit cooler in tones, and they look pretty nice, so you don't have like a industrial grow light in your apartment, or one of those purple ones, which do kind of look cool for a while, but it can really mess with your eyes. So don't get stressed out if you put your plant somewhere and you're not too sure if it's getting enough light. I remember when I first started, I got so anxious and so worried all the time that my plants weren't getting enough light. Basically, as soon as I brought them home, I would move them every couple of days. Honestly, they're not gonna die that fast. For a plant to really start to die from not getting enough light, it's gonna be at least a month. So just look for the signs. You should be able to tell if it's not getting enough light. Plants will usually lean towards the light because they're trying to reach towards it. Other signs is like it's reaching towards it and then the growth pattern has gotten like really long and spread out. So it's not getting enough nutrients, and then you can just move it somewhere else. Another thing, when you bring them home, you don't need to repot them right away. This is something that I always did growing up as a kid. It was, I think, just a common thing to do in the 90s and the early 2000s was as soon as you bought a plant, you take it home and then you repot it. I remember going to a plant store and be like, thinking like, oh my God, I need to save this plant. I need to repot it right away. You really don't need to do that. The plant being at the store and then coming home with you is gonna put it under stress. So you just leave it in that pot for a while. Like you repot plants once a year, pretty much. Some plants also like being root bound, like Sansevierias. When you do repot your plant, always repot it in a plastic one that has holes in it. Don't ever put it right in the ceramic pot with rocks at the bottom. It's a surefire way to kill your plant eventually. You need some aeration, you need a lot of really good drainage so you don't overwater your plant and give it root rot. You can always just plop it inside of a pot after and it will look really good, or a basket or what have you. That brings me on to watering. Definitely underwater rather than overwater. Another thing to look out for when you do your research is look to see if you can find out what the root system is like. So if the root system is really thick, really bulbous, it will hold on to a lot more moisture. So that means that it doesn't need to be watered a lot. Whereas if it has a really thin root system, something like a calathea, then these ones do need more water, because for those roots to be in soil and the soil to dry out will completely just dry them out right away because they're so thin. A great tool to have starting off is a moisture meter. These are awesome. So if you're ever checking your plant for moisture and you're sticking your finger on the top, you're like, oh, it's, you know, it's kind of dry. It still might be wet down here. So stick them in there. So this one is pretty dry, but it's great for medium and large size pots. This way you can actually see if the middle part or the bottom part of the pot is still retaining moisture. So along with really thick root systems versus thin root systems, you need to look at sort of the stems and the leaves as well. So an example is something like this. This is the Calathea macoyana. Really thin leaves. You can feel it So these ones have really thin root systems, and the stems also really tiny. So this guy's not going to hold on to moisture really well. Whereas something like this is a philodendron or an aroid root type plant. It's an Epipremnum pinnatum. You can even hear it. It's got good bounce to it. Also, like, you can kind of feel it when they need to be watered. So yeah, really thick stems and thick leaves. So these ones will hold on to water more. So lighting versus watering when you first bring your plant home and you don't want to kill it. Watering it, like overwatering it, is gonna kill your plant 100 times more than putting it in the wrong spot for lighting. So be really, really careful about watering your plant too much. I know it goes against our instincts of wanting to, you know, take care of something and give water to it all the time, but that's what kills most houseplants. I get a lot of my friends asking me what's wrong with my plant, and a lot of the time it is because it's been overwatered. Although I have a bunch of plants, I can't for the life of me really take care of succulents or snake plants. So I don't know if that's because my memory is really bad or I am still just overwatering them, but I kill most of the ones that I buy. So if you buy a plant at the store and you know that it will get root rot easy, like when I bought this one, it was completely drenched and it was getting root rot leaves. So this means that it's been overwatered. It sounds crispy now, but if the bottom of the leaves start turning like brown and yellow at the tips, that means that it's got too much water. So I took it home, I took it into the bath, I took all the soil out, tried to get it as dry as I could, and then I just repotted it in new soil, and it's definitely helped it grow. It helped it from getting root rot. It's winter where I am, so another good tip I want to share is if there's any way that you can put your plant somewhere warm, if you accidentally overwater it, definitely do that. This way, where it is will be warmer and it will cause the soil to dry out a little bit more. Side note, still make sure that there's enough humidity in the air for the plant. So you don't want to, you know, put your plant next to a radiator and it's only 20% humidity, because that'll probably just crisp it up. I'm lucky enough in my apartment that I have radiators, but there's a wooden shelf built over top, so I'm able to control how warm it gets. And then I put my drapes around it and I sort of just create like a little warm room inside of it. So watering your plants in the summer versus the winter, definitely completely different. Summer, it's a lot brighter, it's a lot warmer, the days are longer, the sun is out longer. So they drink a lot faster because they're growing a lot faster. In the winter, a lot colder, the sun is not out as much. So really dial back your watering. I've never really been a fan of any like, oh, give your plant, you know, half a cup of water every 3 days. I think that's ridiculous. Just check on your plants all the time. Just touch the soil, look at them, see how they are, do like a walk around, and you should be able to keep on top of it. Another tip is humidity. Some plants need a certain level of humidity. Behind me, I've got my Levoit humidifier. I keep my place usually between 50% and 65% humidity. Before I had the humidifier, I used to mist my plants a lot. And I got a really bad mold problem with a lot of my plants. It was something that I didn't realize could happen because I was still pretty new to everything. So I'm wary of spritzing my plants a lot. There's only one plant that I really do spritz every day, and it's a Nepenthes, which is a pitcher plant. It's a type of carnivorous plant, so those ones like to be wet all the time and really humid. I really want to help people who are new to owning plants so that they can get more. They really bring so much joy. I would have gone crazy if I didn't have these plants here over the last year. Oh my goodness. It's fun to watch them grow. And those are my tips that I wish I knew when I first started collecting plants. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe. I love plants. I love making new plant friends. Let me know if you've got any questions in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time. Bye.